With everything that's been going on, have you wondered if this great country, after over 200 years, might be dying a slow death? And if so, does this election serve kind of like a national bucket list? But first, as always, we start with the Laudare mission.
With firm faith, I believe and profess everything that the Catholic Church teaches. But for many reasons, the fullness of that message hasn't been getting out lately. What if we, together, set out to learn the faith, to live the faith, and to share this faith, like missionaries of old? What would the world look like in 100 years?
I've said this a lot lately, and I'm going to say it again here. Despite the subject matter, this is not intended to be a political video. I am not a Republican. I personally do not believe that politics is equipped to fix any of this. What I am focused on is how in the last 6 months, this country has erupted in such turmoil. It's not very different from what happened in the Middle East 10 years ago in what has been called the Arab Spring. In all of this turmoil, for some strange reason, as if everyone on the face of the earth has forgotten world history, Marxism and communism have been proposed as the solution to all of our problems. It's as if the ship is sinking, and before it goes down, we want to squeeze the last bit of hedonism out of this country before it's too late. Have you ever seen those world population clocks online? You know, the ones that have the never-ending tickers. The numbers just keep rising higher and higher. I think you could characterize modern politics by the apprehension society has to those numbers. You see, modern politicians look at those growing numbers with dread. That number is a problem. It needs to go down, not up, because, well, overpopulation, economic resources, pollution, healthcare, etc., etc. And you can see this expressed in nearly all of their policies, whether it's financing Planned Parenthood or their environmental programs or their healthcare initiatives. And now, during this election, you almost get the feeling that they're going for broke. They're going after every socialist dream, an American bucket list, because now the time is ripe to fundamentally transform this society into something that our grandparents would never recognize. There's a philosophical principle that the first in intention is the last in execution. And what does that principle tell us when we see that when God created the world, yes, he first created the stars and the moon and the sun and the ocean and the sky and the land and the fish and the birds and the beasts, but the last thing that he created was us. It tells us that we were his intention from the very beginning, from the first words. Let there be light. We were in his mind. In other words, we weren't an inconvenience to him, nor were we a mistake. He wanted us. But the story doesn't stop there, because after he created us, he commanded us to be fruitful and to multiply, because it was his intention from the beginning that each and every one of us be born. Because long before we existed, he imagined us, and he loved the idea that one day we might exist. So he did all of this so that you might live. But that's not the message that's been communicated over the last century. No, you've been taught to believe that you are a burden, that you've used up too much of the world's resources, that your carbon footprint is too large, and you are a random accident that just happened to evolve from animal mutations. Perhaps they've convinced you that you don't deserve the privilege of being alive. Over the last 100 years, we've seen entire industries rise up and profit on the belief that you don't deserve to be alive, because the world is too overpopulated or too polluted, or because your parents were too poor, or because there's not enough opportunity in your community. And sometimes It just makes sense. Good sense. It may be a matter of choice, or even an issue of good health care. This isn't a political video. My purpose here is to remind you that God made it part of who we are, in our very nature. He designed us so that we could participate with Him in bringing forth new life, participating with Him in creation, that we have as a gift from Him that privilege that two could become one. He gave us this gift, and then He rested. The Creator created all of this so that He could create us, and then we could bring forth children. And that means that unlike modern politicians, when God watches these numbers ticking higher and higher, He is filled with joy, because this was His intention from the beginning. In 1992, Mr. Ladd explained that the government cannot pass a law forcing you to wear blue socks because you have the right to wear red socks. Today, Mr. Ladd has informed Laudare News that he would like to retract that hypothetical example and amend his lesson from 1992. Mr. Ladd now explains that it seems as though the government